Hi guys, how you doing? Welcome to the Poleshift News. I'm over at poleshiftnews.com and I'm on the live solar data. As you can see, the geomagnetic field is quiet, the normal solar X-rays, and if you look at the sun's disk today, there is sunspots and they're equatorial. That's just an indication of really where we are on the solar cycle. Not much activity with regards to the sun. Low sun, solar X-rays, low protons, KP index low, as you'd expect. I've added a couple of extra graphs to the chart, but just before we do, I just want to mention that we're in the solar cycle 24 and we're at 2018. Those equatorial sunspots are an indication of a solar cycle coming to an end, and as you can see, that predicted line, the lowest predicted line on solar cycle 24, just rebuts that as well. One other thing I want to mention, our climatologists are still beating the drum of CO2 producing, global warming at the moment, but my argument has always been, when I've seen this map, is okay, if that's the case, we know that when we receive low sunspot numbers, we also have, according to what we're looking at, Maunder minimums, Dalton minimums, and if CO2 is responsible for, warming the climate, then how come it was sunspots that are clearly indicated in this chart that are rising before the Industrial Revolution even got underway in the 1760s? My point is that the climatologists will always say that from the 1760s, the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, is when we started to really, compound the amounts of CO2 in our atmosphere, and that has led to global warming. But we rose from the Little Ice Age during the Maunder minimum to the period of the Industrial Revolution without emitting too much CO2. If you just compare that to the modern maximum, it was fine up until recently, where CO2 continued to rise, but the temperatures have now declined. If we look at temperature vs sunspots on a more clearer chart, we'll see that that is the case. Sunspots do follow the same patterns as irradiance and solar flares and radio flux, as well as temperature. Again, another Maunder minimum chart I've put up there. I've put during the Little Ice Age just a chart that shows you the warm periods and the cool periods and the sun's activity since the 1600s. If you're interested, just before we do, here's a good example of how little sunspots are forming at this point in the solar cycle. If we look at July the 19th, 2000, you can see that there's lots of sunspots, and they are around about 30 degrees north, 30 degrees south, indicating a maximum, and we're right at the minimum at the moment now. Even though this goes back to 2009, you can see March 2009, hardly, if any, sunspots at all. If you're interested in why the ozone layer is shrinking, then maybe this little Maunder minimum graphic might give you some clues as to why that is. I don't know if you've seen it, the 11,000 year sunspots activity, but you can see from the last 11,000 years it's been dropping off. And if we just concentrate on the last 3 solar cycles, the last 36 years, or 33 years, sorry, we'll see that that is the case. It's following the trend even right at this time. So, it might be worth you going over there to have a look at that, guys. What else did I put up on the site? I've done a few add-ons. Sustainable future growth was one of them. I just wanted to open the topic up for sustainability in the future, and what this is concerning with is the amount of people that will be on the planet in 2050. It's said or estimated to be around about 9.5 billion. And the question is, can the Earth sustain that many people during that period of time? If it can't, then we need to go back to the board and, relook at things, because we've got some people who are soon to be joining us on this planet over the next 30 years that might not have a very welcoming period of time whilst they're on here to find better words. I know there are better words than that, but there you go. But what this looks at, these two articles here, is, what is the capacity of the Earth that it can hold in humans? And it looks at a few different things. So it's I found it interesting. I think you guys will find it interesting. If you can't get over to the website, the estimate is, let's go from one extreme to the other. Some say 10 billion is the maximum, and that also goes to 1,000 billion, which is a massive amount, isn't it? Now, obviously, there's a lot of reasons why certain people think 1,000 billion, obviously a 10, but a more realistic one is from 10 to 40 billion. Even though you might have heard talk that 9.5 could be a maximum. Well, the thing is there's a lot of variables involved in that. You can't really use what we've got in the past examples for the same reason we can't use them in the future, because the way we do things in the past is different today, and the way we're going to be doing things in the future is going to be different as well. And that's why there's a lot of variables involved in estimating how many people can be on this planet. If you ask me, I think it comes down to photosynthesis. If we said 1 hectare per person to sustain them in food, now whether that be vegetables or meat or even a combination of the two, this is what I mean. The variables start to, kick out of control. The more you add into this model, the more it changes and alters the amount that can live on the planet. But the fact is, plant life needs to photosynthesize, and there's only a certain amount of surface area on the planet that receives adequate amounts to sustain life. For instance, in the Antarctic, there's not a lot of foliage growing, and therefore the limitations of people being in that region are for the same reason. And even those that only eat vegetables would struggle, even in even in moderate temperatures where foliage grows. The other thing is animals also eat grass and vegetation, and we eat animals as well as vegetables. So, like I said, there's a lot of variables. This just talks about a few examples, of how people have based it on history, how things have been done, such as in China during the wars and things like that, and then, forecasted that for the future. Might be worth your having a little look at it. You might find something interesting in it. So, as you know from the other video the other day, our magnetosphere has gone online now. We've set it at increments of 15 minutes, so it'll take one reading every 15 minutes, and then we'll see how it goes. The scale on the left-hand column, even though I haven't included the units, is in microteslas. If you go on to poleshiftnews and have a look at magnetometer data, you'll see that they measure it in nanoteslas. So you just add 1,000 to get nanoteslas. So microteslas are measuring in not so accurate amounts, but nevertheless, as you can see, I virtually calibrated this at 200 microteslas, and what we're looking for is over a long period of time is a decay, and a trend, and we'll probably only need 6 months to a year, and we'll be able to forecast from that point on how fast the Earth's magnetosphere is decaying. You can't get hold of this information from any of these websites that I've been looking for anyhow. I've never been able to get an archive of the magnetosphere decaying. But it's interesting that, this figure of 20% over 50 years has been reduced. So what we want to do is we want to see for ourselves if that is the case, and that's the reason why we set the trimagnetometer station up, to monitor the tracking of the magnetic North Pole over the northern hemisphere towards Siberia at the moment. The only way to get an honest account of this, other than take somebody else's word for it, is actually do it yourself, and that's what we do on this channel website now. That's what this research is gearing towards. I don't think there's any other YouTube channel out there doing the same thing as what we're doing here. I haven't come across anyone that has an archive of the magnetosphere depleting. And within 6 months, we're going to be able to forecast on what we've seen so far with, the data that's been collected from that sensor. As well, we're just waiting now for it to gradually come with the trimagnetometer into that 11 degrees. If you remember, and if you go onto the website and look at the trimag data, just bear in mind that the reason why we calibrated it at 10 degrees is because it could have went below 10 degrees. That would have meant that the North Pole had been tracking back towards Canada. If it goes above 10 degrees, then we know it's moving. Sorry, I got that round the wrong way. If it goes below 10 degrees, it's moving westerly. If it goes above 10 degrees, it's moving easterly towards Siberia. Yeah, I've got that right. So that's why we calibrated it at 10 degrees. If we put it at 0, can you imagine what the chart would have looked like? If it just deviated below 0, it would have gone to 360 on the chart. And that would have been really confusing for some people. Yeah, a lot of people know that, you know, when you're talking about headings, it's on, you know, a scale of 0 to 360 degrees. 0 being north, 180 degrees being south. You know, so you know, it just meant for simplicity of getting a nice graph. You know, if I explain that to people that we calibrated at 10 degrees, they would know if it moved above 10 degrees, it'd still be tracking easterly towards Siberia. So, guys, I'm going to leave it here. You know, we're still waiting for the power supply for the cloud chamber that we're going to build. There's a couple of things, tools, you know, would be on my wish list. I don't know whether any of you would be interested in helping get those. Some of them are expensive, though. That's the thing. But I just can't clearly outlay the money straight out for them. But I have seen these tools, and you know, I've had plenty of jobs over the time where I thought, you know, that would be great if we could get one of them, and you know, we could use it for other things. What I'm talking about a CNC lathe, a small one. I've seen a couple on eBay. I mean, they're £10,000 brand new, but the second-hand ones are £1,000 and even below that. It'd be great if we could get one of them. You know, we could do some videos on stuff that we make. You know, and not just present the finished thing. We could also show you the making of it, and that could be educational for some people. The other things, you know, just some simple stuff, really, which would make my life easier. I mean, I've got to make a thermal block for that cloud generator, and I don't really want to be sitting there all day long for the next week, you know, Dremel in out the canals for the water to travel through. It just would be nice to drop it on a CNC, program it, and let the machine do it in about 30 minutes, if that. And that's the same for, you know, some of the things that we could bespoke make. Like if we had a 3D printer, we could you know, make some of the housing in a more professional manner. So, you know, I don't know whether some of you guys would be interested in funding some of that equipment. It's up to you. Like I say, I think it'd be educational for people as well, just to learn how to use that stuff. And you know, I wouldn't mind doing, you know, a few videos on that as and when. I suppose that's it, guys. You know, the link's down there if you want to support. Thank you to those guys that have supported this channel to this date. And you know, all I can say is, you know, that other people get just as much enjoyment out of some of the things we talk about on this channel, and you know, present on the website, as those that do feel enough to support it. And you know, I say this always, come on, don't just leave it to a few, you know, to carry the cart. It's always easier to push it when there's more of us. You know, it'd be nice if we could raise some more money for some of these things on this channel, and more people can benefit. We just all need to put our hands in the pockets a little bit more. You know, I don't mind my time, spending my time, and even my own money. And if we can just get a few more people to help out, we can achieve a lot. You know, as I've demonstrated, I don't need a lot of money. I always find a way of maximising whatever we've got and doing a lot with it. So, you know, the link's down there, guys, if you want to support. As always, I say what I usually do. Bye for now.